City, did you participate in the KenGen IPO?
Once upon a time.
It was once.
It was a long time ago. It was. And the shares were profitable.
But a couple of shares.
Yes, then I did actually. I used to participate in those commercial adventures. I no longer do. And even when I did sell what I had, I did make some money.
You did that?
Yeah, I did. And I didn't even understand KenGen as I do now. Yes. And why I understand it well, because there's somebody who preceded you who happened to have been a very good friend of mine. And it is him who actually, a gentleman called Njenga. He made me understand what KenGen does. Right. Before, I thought it was a department in Kenya Power. Yes.
Yeah. And so when Eddie took the KenGen to the market and listed, and many people participated in it, there were many who understood what it was. Others were seeing the potential. It's about power. In his steamer, it's all right. I will put my money into it. I'll buy shares. And many of us bought shares. Going with the buzz, with the wave, everybody's doing IPO, go and buy the shares.
They were really very good shares.
And then you actually end up with a very, very good share. For example, this morning, KenGen has made an announcement that it has announced a commendable half-year performance marked by a notable 8.4% surge in net revenue, reaching 24.7 billion shillings for the 6 months ending December 31st, 2023. This NSE-listed energy generator attributed the positive outcome to favorable hydrology and heightened plant efficiency, setting the stage for sustained growth in Kenya's energy sector. The managing director and CEO of KenGen is our next guest. He's engineer Peter Njenga. Engineer, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
That is the seat of the Situation Room. It'll be a bigger shock. Engineer and I were at the engineers convention in Mombasa.
That one.
The one in November last year. I was moderating, and he was, of course, there as an engineer and as CEO of Kenya's biggest energy generator. He participated in a panel conversation. I wasn't the moderator for that one, but the person who was moderating that kept forgetting his name, and that made the moments.
What did he deign to call?
So instead of engineer Peter Njenga, should call him engineer Waweru.
Oh, just like anything she wanted, okay.
Yeah, she's forgetting the engineer.
But Waweru is also my name.
Mwaura. So at one point he corrects and says, I am engineer Peter Waweru Njenga. I am the MD and CEO of KenGen. Oh yeah, apologies, engineer. Next
proceeded.
Time, engineer Mwaura. So engineer, karibu sana. We will make sure we get your name right.
Yeah.
Engineer Peter Waweru Njenga.
Yes.
To welcome you to the conversation, City will give you the day's proverb.
Yep.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Benin. Before you ask a man for clothes, look at the clothes he is wearing.
Before you ask a man for clothes, look at the clothes he's wearing. What's your interpretation of this proverb?
Well, thank you very much for having me. That would mean, of course, that you need to associate with the people who you think you are like-minded. Their practices fit your own description of what you would want to be, and that's why you need to look at their clothes before you can actually ask for clothes.
It's always amazing when you ask people for interpretations, because many times you tell someone something you hadn't thought of, and it's so accurate and it's so apt. Good.
Yep. If you like suits, then ask for clothes from somebody who wears suits.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a very good one. Very good one. Somebody that you're like-minded. So, engineer, you have announced some good performance for the half year ending December, and this is talking about revenues going up to 24 billion shillings. Who do you make this money from?
Well, maybe before I answer that question, Latif, I want to introduce myself. You said you don't want to make a mistake. I'm engineer Peter Waweru Njenga, the managing director and CEO KenGen, Kenya Electricity Generating Company PLC. And I'm proud today to be the man at the helm, managing this great organization. KenGen is the highest electricity power generating company in Kenya. In fact, in East African region. And coupled with that, we pride ourselves actually that we are the highest geothermal generating company in the region. And when you look at the statistics, if, for example, you want to work out the composition of geothermal power generation in the whole portfolio of many countries, including the largest economies in this world, America, Kenya has the highest generating component of electric energy in the world. So we are very proud to be who we are today. The announcement we have done today is a testament of the journey we have walked. We are proud that, in fact, arising from increase of our revenues from our machines, basically we have said we generate electricity. And that is where we derive most of our revenues. And we have managed our power plants to beyond 90% availability for providing electric energy in this country. And that is the main reason why we believe we are able to do the revenues that we have done over the years. And we are looking forward in future to even generate more revenues. Of course, a number of challenges here and there, but we are working to overcome those challenges. You have seen perhaps in that statement that the profit after tax has reduced. And basically it's because the tax element, the tax expenses went up compared to the same period last year. From 1.4 billion, the tax expenses for this period that we have announced results is 1.8 billion. That will tell you that that is a possible reason why our profit after tax has gone down. But the profit before tax has actually grown by 1.8%. And we are happy of those results. Yes.
You only have one customer, don't you?
Yes. But, going into the future, the opportunities have been opened up. The regulator, EPRA, has recently published regulations where we are now going to be able to supply power directly to customers. And we are looking at that as a very great opportunity so that we can have more customers.
Directly to others, isn't it?
From the generator direct to you. The generator direct to you.
So essentially, what would happen is that the monopoly of your customer, essentially, then would cease to be.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what it means.
So then, you talk about having been able to make profits, having been able to be the number one power generation in the region. Is everything that you produce used by your customer?
Yes. In fact, when you look at the numbers, the installed capacity in this country currently is standing about 3.3 gigawatts.
What does that mean?
3,300 megawatts. The composition of KenGen is 1.9 gigawatts. That's about 60%. And if you look at the demand, the highest demand that has ever been recorded, and I think the highest was recorded in December last year, I think on 19th of December, when the highest demand was at 2170. You can see that we are still not meeting the maximum demand. So everything from KenGen is taken by our off-taker.
Okay. Yeah. What are the sources of power generation here? What sources are we looking at? And what is being used the most from what you then are able to generate?
I think it's important that we talk about, we have renewable energy. And our portfolio is basically hydro, is the highest composition at 45%. We have geothermal at about 39%. Then we have wind, which is less than 2%. The balance is thermal from the fossil fuels.
Yes.
You know that hydro has really been affected by the weather.
Yes.
The vagaries of weather. Last year, I remember even in the very rainy places, you would go and find that the grass is dry. And if you lit a match, the grass would burn. I And that was so bad for us. And at one point, immediately I joined KenGen. I had an opportunity of going to Masenga. And the biggest reservoir was almost drying up. But who is God? Within 2 weeks, the rains came. And again, we were caught up with a challenge of how now do we manage this water that is too much.
Yeah.
And I remember we had even to form an emergency team, even at the ministry level, to monitor so that this water, as it goes up, we are able to advise the people downstream that these waters can rise. And in case we have to spill, of course, what would happen. The rivers would perhaps break the banks and affect the people who are settled along the river. So we needed to monitor it day in, day out. So we have hydro. And because hydro was the original generating source, the equipment was set many years ago, so they have been fully amortized. So the cost of hydropower is very low. So you look at the way you order, the off-taker normally looks at what is the cost. Hydro is the lowest, come in. Geothermal is the next, come in. Solar is the next, come in. Wind is the next, come in. So that we manage the cost of power to the customers. So our portfolio is hydro, we have geothermal, and we have wind, and we have thermal. We are looking into solar. I'm sure you have noticed I haven't talked about solar.
Yep.
But solar is the next frontier. Everybody is talking about it. And we are also having a project that is in the pipeline to establish a solar power plant among our hydropower plants. You know how that one will work for us?
On top of the dam?
Yeah, if possible, or even on the side, because we have a lot of land on the side. We'll start on that one that is on the side. And what it will do for us is that during the day when there is sun, we use the solar. At night, we use the water. So it will complement each other.
How many thermal plants do you have?
We have 2 thermal plants.
Where are they?
One in Mombasa, Kipevu. That is the biggest. Then we have Moroni in the western region.
Why do we need thermal?
Latif, power, you generate it from one point and you have to transport it to the other point.
Yeah.
And if you look at the interconnectivity of the transmission network in this country, and if you have been following the conversation, is that we have a small challenge in the evacuation of power to all the other parts of this country. So, for example, I've told you geothermal is the highest. We are the highest generating, country geothermal-wise. But for us to evacuate power from Olkaria in Naivasha, we need, big evacuation lines, the transmission lines that we talk about, all the way to Mombasa, where that line is now under construction, almost being completed. And the challenge has been in Mombasa, we don't have, base load power.
What does that mean?
Base load power is, Latif, base load is that consistent load that customers demand over a period, say, of 24 hours. That there is a minimum power that must always be available. And for you to be able to do that, you must have a reliable source. Reliable sources like, for example, hydro, if we have adequate rains and we have adequate water. Geothermal, which is very consistent. Currently in this country, actually, geothermal is our base load power.
Okay.
Because it is very consistent. But when you go into solar, for example, when a cloud comes over the solar plant, it goes down.
Yeah.
So that you can't use that as base load power. You talk about wind, sometimes depending on weather during the day or during the night, the wind is either very heavy or low.
Yeah.
And therefore, again, you cannot rely on that. We call it intermittency or variable renewable sources, wind and solar. So thermal, again, because thermal is a generator. The normal generator you have in your house, if you have one, it has consistent power generation, depending on what you are looking at. You put the fuel, and as long as you have adequate fuel, it continues generating that particular power consistently. So in Mombasa, our base load is provided by the thermal. And that's why we have thermal in Mombasa to stabilize the generation in Coast Region. The same thing is happening to Western. Although currently Muhoroni is not generating. The power purchase agreement expired, and we are in the process of negotiating on how we can renew it. So again, in the Western, you notice that there is challenges sometimes during peak time when the power demand goes up and then the supply is not available.
Okay.
Yeah.
What then, because we know KenGen obviously is a power generator.
Yes.
What's the difference, or what relationship then exists between KenGen and independent power producers?
They are our competitors.
And where are their sources?
And it's good to have competition. I think if you have no competitor, you don't look for opportunities to improve your performance. So they are a good competitor. And the relationship is that one where we have actually to up our game. That we must provide our reliable, our safe, and competitively priced electric power, every electric energy every other time. So our pricing is normally the best. In types of pricing, it's better than the independent power producer, and perhaps it's because we have the support of the government. We are able to develop our plans using on-lent loans, which are cheaper. But the independent power producers have to go to the open market to be able to fund their projects. So that is where we are, and we like the competition.
I'm sure you do.
Yes.
So I want to ask this then,
Yes.
because obviously looking at a better price.
Yes.
What you're talking better, of course, for us means if we have to pay less, then it's a better price.
Yes.
Right? And it's a bit sticky, but oftentimes when things have gone off, KenGen would have been blamed, unfortunately, by your customer as the reason behind why,
There's a national
blackout. And
Yes.
it lasted for 2 hours and 59 minutes longer than it actually should have. Whether generators kicked in or not. So where does that relationship happen for where you produce the power to where it is then delivered, and then who's responsible for making sure it reaches to where now, so where your job terminates in terms of producing and delivering? Who then takes over? What relationship then do you have when we now want to play this interesting blame game?
First of all, let me say that we are enjoined at the hip with the energy players in this sector. Power is that commodity that you generate and it has to be used.
Consumed.
Yeah, although we have now technologies where we are talking about storage, but ideally you generate and consume. So you have to work very closely with the people who transmit and with the people who are going to offtake the power. There has to be a very nice synchronization so that you generate, you transmit, it is taken. And that system is interconnected. And if anything happened to a generator, for example, that will be noticed in the whole system. If something happens in the transmission network, it will also be reflected in the whole system. If something happens at the end in the distribution, again, it will be noticed. Because, for example, if you have a distribution power plant, a power station that takes a lot of load and it is off all of a sudden, then it means that we must also reduce the generation to match the demand, because the demand has now gone down. So our systems must be able to talk to each other. And that's why there has to be very good communication between ourselves. The National Control Center will contact our generators and they will tell them, now that we have this sudden drop of this, can you now reduce your generation from this machine or put off this machine? And that is the way they work together. So it is not a blame game. In fact, what we have been saying, whenever there is a blackout, all of us come out. You might have been seeing KPLC on the front line, because they are the ones who have the linkages with the clients and the customers. But we are behind, giving them a lot of backup to ensure the moment whatever was the problem has been identified and isolated, then all of us are able now to bring back the systems and synchronize one by one. So we work together.
Our guest this morning is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Electricity Generating Company, KenGen, Engineer Peter Waweru Njenga. We are talking about Kenya's energy sector. And of course, there's been this push, in fact, a national declaration by the president that we shall move into 100% green energy within a few years' time. KenGen, as the largest electricity generator in this country, has got to take a lead on this. And that's what we want to ask him as well. What are you doing about that? He's just told us, well, Kenya's installed power capacity is 3.3 gigawatts. KenGen contributes 1.9 gigawatts of that. That's about 60%. So there's some 40% that's provided by other companies, popularly known as independent power producers. We'll talk about that shortly. Siti, you've got a question for the MD.
You know, what always puzzles me is when I look at hydroelectric power and I look at water, which is in the rivers, and I look at the siltation process that takes place over time when it rains, and so the capacity of the rivers just keeps reducing and reducing. Two questions. One, how often do we desilt our rivers? Because if it rains heavily and that isn't done, clearly there'll be flooding. Mm-hmm. Two, how do you ensure that when we have plenty of water, we conserve as much of it as possible? Now, the second, that's question 1B. Question 2, this one really puzzles me. Is there technology to actually harness and store power? You know, forget the batteries. I know there are batteries. I know there's a company called Tesla that has come up with some really heavy-duty batteries that are supposed to do this. But I'm looking at this resource we call the sun. Mm-hmm. We have so much of it. And I'm looking at the power that is generated and what we could do with it. Mm-hmm. What am I saying? I'm saying we have an inbuilt solution to our power problems right where we sit. And I'm asking, what are we doing? But I've compartmentalized it in the question that I've asked.
Uh-huh. Question number 1, siltation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Siltation. In fact, if you take an example of small rivers in our normal rural places, and where I come from and where I was born and bred and brought up, we had a river. And because of the cultivation activities by the farmers, over time, that is now normal. Or if there is any water that flows, there is just very little. So the same thing happens, even for the rivers that we are using to, harness the water to drive our machines. When you build a dam, of course, it means that that dam, you block the flow of the water, and you understand the chemistry. When the water, stagnates, the debris and whatever and the soils settle. Yeah. So over time, of course, there is a lot of siltation, which means you reduce now the volume of water you're able to store. But the good thing and the good news is that there is technology for carrying out desilting, whether it's on those dams or on the rivers where we're harnessing. But of course, we need a long-term solution. Where does this silt come from? It's from upstream, where the people are carrying out their farming activities. So we normally do what we call a planting of trees to be able to ensure that the runoff water does not wash away the soil, and that is an activity that we are very endeared to because we understand what it means to us. It's very expensive, by the way, exercise for carrying out desilting. Very expensive. If you look down your store, maybe you should go and visit Sonu Miriu, where we are currently working very hard to do the desiltation and removing what we call the hippograss. Because of the silt, is some interesting grass that has grown over the reservoir. And we have again to remove it mechanically because there is no any other way of doing it. Just like what happened in Lake Victoria and the hyacinth that normally covers almost the whole of Lake Victoria. So it's a big challenge, but we have to live with it. But we also have to look at long-term solutions by ensuring that we conserve the areas around where water comes from.
Okay. Second question.
Yes. This is about
storage.
The storage of electricity energy.
This resource that we have in so much abundance.
This solar in Africa, and especially in the tropicals, is available 12 hours in a day. Currently, the technology that is available, which is where people are really working on, is the battery storage. That you generate, you move it to a battery. Just the same way you have your phone. You want to charge your battery so that when you're not connected, the phone draws the power from the battery. The other way is if you can harness that solar and use it to pump back the water. You know, the water that went down the turbines and is going downstream. You can also pump it back to the reservoir and reuse it, because it's just being used as a fuel to drive the turbines and generate. So that is something that has to be considered. But of course, when the water is falling down and you want to pump it up, you require a lot of energy to do that, and perhaps that's where you are referring to. It is available.
It is available.
It is available in great quantity. So that is the area perhaps that we need to look at and see how do we utilize that energy to pump back the water.
Can I ask just a third question before we exit?
Yes.
In an organization that has such grave importance to the nation and nation building, what is your research component? Because this is what you do on a daily basis.
Yes.
For you to be able to keep up with the times and to ensure that into posterity, KenGen is alive to the realities of the present and the future. What does your research department look like, and what are the plans that they have for the future?
A lot of research goes on, and perhaps what I should talk about here is, technology is changing very quickly. And we have encouraged our employees to, look out for the new technologies that are coming up. We have provided them with the equipment where they can be able to access the internet, access this information. And we organize sessions where employees come up and tell us, there is this new thing that is coming up here. This is the way this country is harnessing this particular innovation, or this is the way we can be able to borrow this particular information and be able to improve on what we do, improve the efficiencies of our machines. For example, now we have realized, the turbines that we built in the early years, for example, the oldest geothermal power plant that was built, the first machine was commissioned in 1981, for example, more than 40 years ago. That technology is already overtaken by events. There is new technology, perhaps, where you have more efficient turbines, more efficient generators that can generate more power with the same amount of steam.
Yep.
And that's what we are doing. We have one of the oldest power plant now. We are pulling it down completely and rebuilding it afresh. And we believe at the end of the day, from the original 45 megawatts, it's now going to give us 63 megawatts. So research has been done, and it has been established with the same steam, it will generate higher amount of power.
And these new turbines are developed originally by KenGen?
Yes.
Or are you
in conjunction with development partners? Yes, we have development partners like JICA from Japan. We have KfW from Germany. Many people who come and help us to develop this.
So are you building the turbine here, or are you building it elsewhere and bringing it to Kenya?
The turbines are built from the manufacturers. These are done outside there. In Japan, in Germany, those are the companies that build these turbines. They are very complicated technology, but they normally come and establish what are the conditions and do their designs and the tests their designs.
Does KenGen have in its plan, like just going back into what City is asking, a plan to have a proper institution for research and development that then works either with academia or with other private sector supporting them in terms of even capital, because you make money in investing in a local research and manufacturing plant for technology in energy distribution, in energy generation? I ask this because nearly everything that we use in this country is sourced from elsewhere, and this adds to the cost of just installing a machine. True. So what are you doing about
that? Let me say this. Last year, I think it was sometimes in September, I had the privilege of going to Japan. And the companies who help us to make these equipments, the turbines and the machines, they are very, very happy to come and establish institutions here that we can work with them and be able to do these new technologies from within here. Because every power plant is different. And that's why when we give them the work to do development of any power plant, they have to come here and collect data and go back and do the designs. But it's possible for us to now establish that research and development function and work together with them and be able to do these designs and development of these projects from here.
But engineer, is that a specific item in your plan?
Yes.
Is it there? How much are you dedicating into saying over the next 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, KenGen will support local manufacturing of all technology that's needed for generation of power?
We are still in discussions because some of these research and functions, we are not sure how much it would cost. But there is deliberate effort to ensure that in everything we do, there is set aside a certain amount for us to facilitate that research. We normally finance our engineers and our technicians to go out there and get to know what are the new technologies that are out there. So there is that commitment. But I think, as you say, it might be important going forward to specifically have a department that carries out research and development in KenGen. Okay. And that's something we are going to look at.
I look at the energy mix that we have, and especially what KenGen has. Hydro, those dams that were established many years ago. The latest one is what, Takwa?
Yes, we have Takwa, the hydro.
So these are dams that you inherited from the parent giant Kenya Power. Geothermal was, you initially, 1981, Kenya Power set up its first geothermal plant. And then we have a geothermal development corporation that does the exploration. And you come in the at the end of this exploration to basically just start tapping.
Yes.
When you talk about solar, you have been overtaken by others in the market in development of solar energy. Even REREC has a large solar plant in Garissa. Talk about wind. Your wind turbines are here in Ngong, we see them. They are big companies that are doing multi-billion shilling investment in wind.
Yes.
Not KenGen. In Loyangalani, in Kajiado. KenGen is sort of just being caught up with what you inherited is the same talent that you're using.
Yes.
We have not seen you going into any of these newer ones robustly.
Yes.
Is that not dangerous, bearing in mind that you currently only have 60% control of the installed capacity? This could reduce.
Latif, let me tell you, it was a strategic decision.
To do what?
To go into geothermal. And I can tell you the benefits are really great for this country. Remember in the years 2000, and the dry seasons and the rationing of power, many hours that companies were crying. Why not for the decision that KenGen made to deliberately develop geothermal? Last year, for example, would have been in a lot of trouble. But you realize that there was no much intense rationing of power, even when we had very prolonged dry spells. And it's because of the geothermal. Geothermal potential in this country is 10 gigawatts. Our installed capacity, all the portfolios, is 3.3, as I had said earlier. So we have barely scratched the surface. And that means that somebody has to deliberately go into this geothermal and spend all the resources that are available to ensure that these, you remember I talked about the base load power.
Yes.
Geothermal is a base load power. The wind that you're talking about, Latif, is very variable, intermittent. You cannot rely on it. The wind that you're talking about, perhaps the reason why we did not go into a lot of the wind is because also it is variable. And we wanted to specifically channel the resources that were available with the help of the development partners to ensure that we harness our geothermal availability.
Okay.
And that is an area we are still pursuing even today.
So the strategy going forward is to invest more in geothermal.
In geothermal, that would help this country. But again, we have said we don't want to be left so much behind. You mentioned the solar power plant that was done by REREC. We are the ones who are operating and managing that solar plant. Because of our skills in managing plants. And therefore, when I talked about a solar plant that we shall establish in our hydropower plant area around Kamburu, it's because we know that we have the skills. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it will complement the hydro. During the day, we can use whatever is available from the solar. We preserve our waters, and our weather in this country, you cannot be very sure about when you're going to have the rains, when we're going to have the dry spells. So that is what we are now looking at. The wind, I can tell you, we already have identified areas where we have a lot of wind in Meru, in Marsabit. And we are also doing pre-feasibility studies, and again we'll go into feasibility studies to confirm that actually these projects can actually be done. And we shall be in that area as well.
So when we talk about...
Sorry, Ndu, please go ahead.
Yes.
When we talk about green energy, perhaps it's possible we're asking the same question.
Yes, I was thinking
geothermal then not the most environmentally sustainable form of energy that we speak of today? So ask that question and park it for a minute, and then going back to where the country is said to want to be going in the future, the proclamations by the president to say, look, in the next so many odd years, Kenya should be green. And now here we are, we seem to be doing this dance with geothermal, maybe feasibility studies. Can we see if we can sink some more resources? KenGen has proven that you can produce power, the majority of that power produced today being hydro.
Yes.
Nobody needs, we know you can do it, right? We also know now that you're dabbling with these other ones here and there. So what precludes, apart from, of course, the resource constraint, what precludes it from saying, you know what, we already know that in a few years or so, that the thought is that Kenya will be green. What precludes the move? Not maybe, but like go now, do it.
Very good question. Resources. Projects for generational power are not cheap, they're very expensive. For example, drilling a well, one well can cost you up to about $6 to $7 million US. And some of these things, when you drill a well, and our wells in geothermal, they go all the way to 3,000 meters. If you convert that, is 3 kilometers. That is very
underground.
Deep. That is very deep for you to get to where now you can be able to get that heated steam at the temperatures and pressures that you require. So the cost is actually a prohibition. But the government realized that is a problem, and that's why they set up the Geothermal Development Company to try and de-risk the process, so that the government will put the resources. The drilling of the wells is done. First of all, you start with what we call exploring. You drill a small well to explore, to find out whether it is going to be possible. Then you now go and dig now the real well that is going to generate the power for you. So sometimes, like for example, in Eburu, you're aware of Eburu, we got one well that, and we have a power plant there that is generating about 2 megawatts. We had dug 6 wells. Only one was able to produce. So when you do your mathematics, Ratif, multiply that $6 million US by 5 that is lying there, and it was spent. So it is actually the money that is required. The government is working very hard. We have just talked about the development partners, the financiers from Japan, from Germany. They give us this money, it's online money through the government to be able to do these projects because of the costs. So I can assure you that that drive is there, that purpose is there, but the problem is the resources, and we are working closely with the government to help us to be able to do that. And I've just mentioned that already we are not waiting. We are already doing something to improve whatever we have. Already what we have, can we improve and get more? We are soon going to replace some of the turbines on one of the other geothermal power plants. We call it operating of the turbine and the generator. Put new machines that are going to produce more. We have marked out existing plants that are generating 300 megawatts, and we want to increase that. When you replace the turbines and the generators, they will increase to 340. That will be an extra 40 megawatts. Which
Let
is
me ask this question, engineer.
Yes.
Is geothermal power really green? Can I say why I ask?
Go ahead.
You see, if you consider the depths to which you go,
yes,
there's a possibility remote that greenhouse gases from below the surface of the earth could be released. There's that possibility.
Yes.
So the green component now gets a little interfered with. But that's just one. Given the depths and just the process of construction and what you do to the earth's surface, the possibility of triggering earthquakes, yes, possibility exists.
Yes.
How do you mitigate against this?
That's why I said that a lot of studies have to be done to confirm. Even we have experts who are called geochemists. We have experts who are called geophysics, and I believe the geophysics are the ones who are going to check whether the earth forces below there. If we do anything, interfere by drilling, there will be something like what you're talking about, an eruption of earthquake or something. That is done, and everything is assessed so that we don't have those problems coming up. And I want to assure you that geothermal is green. It's green because those greenhouse gases, actually, we have checked. They are not there as you get the steam from down. They are not there. So it is actually green, and it is sustainable. What we are doing actually to ensure that we are sure that there is no reduction in the amount of steam that comes, we also drill what we call reinjection wells.
Right.
That after the steam has cooled, we get what we call the brine, the cooled steam. We reinject it back to the same depth. Of course, not very close to where we are, because sometimes when you look at the water that is going out, you don't want that cold water to go and interfere with the temperatures of the steam that is coming up. So you look at where do you reinject to reassure yourself. And besides doing that, we are also looking at in Olkaria. We believe that one of the sources of the water that goes underground there is Enospukia forest. So we are working. KenGen Foundation is working very hard with the Narok County government. We recently signed an MOU where they have given us a portion of the forest for us to do reforestation, and that will help us in preserving the source of our water for the geothermal.
Good one. So as we conclude, I just want to give you a moment, speak to Kenyans who know KenGen, who see power. They only see blackouts, they see high prices. Speak about that for a minute. You as MG of just the guy who generates the power.
Fellow Kenyans, I know it has been a concern even for me, the high cost of electricity. But sometimes it's good for us to ask ourselves, when you look back at history, is it rather we have slightly high cost of electricity than actually having none at all? And I think the answer in most people's minds would be would rather have that slightly higher cost of electricity than having none at all. And the incoming of the independent power producers was actually a blessing in disguise. If you look at the other regions in the other countries in the region, there are some of them who did not take on board that idea or strategy of bringing on board other people to help in generation. And they are now suffering today very high levels of rationing of power. But again, KenGen on our side, because of what I talked earlier about our old generating systems, they have been amortized fully. So the cost of power from KenGen, really, if you look at the other power plants or the other independent power producers, we have the cheapest. With the rains that have come now, because hydro is the cheapest currently, then we are able actually to confirm that with more generation of hydro, the cost of electricity comes down.
Okay.
Yes.
Engineer Peter Waweru Njenga.
Yes.
Not Ndungu, not Mwaura.
Not Njoroge.
Not Njoroge. He's the managing director and CEO of the KenGen. He's been here. He's been telling us the KenGen strategy in helping Kenya go to 100% green energy and what they've done so far. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.